Don, I'm glad you're here, brother.
Yeah, man. I'm glad to be here.
Make sure my microphone's on. And it is not, is it?
Microphone testing.
Hello.
Out of curiosity, does this have capability to hook up like
Yeah.
Bluetooth headphones?
I don't know. I have this headset.
That's one of Joe Rogan's things, is that he highly recommends the headsets because
Yeah.
he says it's a big deal whenever you're able to hear each other, like if you're interrupting each other.
Uh-huh. I actually thought about that. You're going to have to help me. Like, I need a good guy who can set it.
Yeah. No, man, that'd be fun. Are we working?
Yeah, you're good. I was like, mine.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Questionable. I never can hear myself like on my own podcast as well as I can hear the guests. So, hello. All right. Not great volume for me, but anyway, thanks for coming, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought about doing the headset thing because I see it, and I actually heard one of the, like, I don't know if you heard the podcast with Joe Rogan where he's like, whoever he had, I can't remember who it was, they could not. Basically, I guess they're getting feedback and they weren't used to it.
Yeah.
So they're hearing the voice.
They
in
can
the
hear
headset,
their own voice. Is what
and they
it was,
didn't. Yeah, and they didn't like. They weren't used to it. Didn't like it, and so they kept kind of saying something about it. And he's like, "You're going to get used to it."
Yeah. The nice thing too is that you'd be able to have a good gauge of your volume control. You would notice if I was way louder than you or vice versa.
Yeah.
And that would be something that you'd be able to address then.
You're supposed to be able to, like we move it from this, it's on, on a memory on this recorder. We move it to, like editing software.
Right. So
and you're supposed to be able to control it there, but I don't think it does as well.
So, and that's the kicker. So what little bit of music production background I have, the kicker there is that you don't want to depend on your editing. You want to get it as close as you possibly can so that you can tweak it in editing, just because, just like you said, the editing doesn't seem to make much of a difference. You want to be able to mess with the micro, not the macro of it.
Yeah, I know, like one of the things we do, and I'm definitely thankful to like Brian, who usually posts it for me, and he tries to do some editing. But, he's also doing it in his spare time when he has time, and I get that. But one of the things I know we do, we put it into one format and then we put it into another software. And I feel like that none of that does a ton of good. It doesn't change it that much. And it doesn't make it spectacular.
Right. Like if there's there's this idea of, it's why your musicians don't take just a clean guitar, play the riff, and then out all the distortion later. They try to dial in all their distortion. They want their sound as perfect as they can get it.
Yeah.
And then they might make a tiny, tiny difference with the editing later, but you want all of your sound dialed in at the beginning. And that way your editing is just cleanup. Your editing shouldn't be the majority of the work.
Have you been following this? It's really kind of old news now, but with the Oliver Anthony.
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things I was listening to, he was on Joe Rogan too.
Yep.
And, one thing I was really surprised by is that, like, when he didn't know that song was going to blow up, and it blew up. And I actually noticed it, I think, like fairly early because I listen to a lot of, what I do is I'm subscribed to Apple Music.
Yeah.
So I'll put in to my phone, I'll type in top 100 in the USA.
Okay.
And that is it's one of their playlists. Well, it's kind of cool because it shows you from 1 to 100 the most downloaded music for today.
Gotcha.
And so you actually can see what's popular. And 90% of the time it's rap, right? But what's funny is that, and also interesting, well, I noticed it. I pulled that up and he's at the top.
Interesting.
Country, and I hadn't heard of the guy. I'm like, and also during that time period, ironically, let's say like somewhere between 5 and 10 was Tejano music in there. It was just interesting. Not that it's not correlated. It's not
what music?
Like Mexican music, Tejano music,
That's funny.
And so that you would never see it on there. So it really caught my attention because I'm like, here's this country artist that I've never heard of, who's at the top of the list, and he was not at the top of the list for like, I want to say a week.
Strange.
Because it's supposed to be, I guess, daily or whatever. And But I was listening to it. Well, I guess when that song blew up, which obviously he didn't know it was going to blow up, then he turned around and said, everybody's telling him you got to record another song.
Right.
So he said that he literally took his phone and recorded his next song. And that's what we were hearing on his next song.
Right.
From his phone.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, I wonder what the quality difference, honestly, is between.
Well, I can tell because it'll pop up on my Pandora. I'm just like, I had a 3-hour drive up here today, so I'm listening to.
I'm sure they have the same kind of thing, right?
So I go through my whole. Well, I just listen to my stereo stations, and I've gotten. It's funny. I'm way into more your heavy, harder type of stuff, but I've found that I like some of this Coulter Wall and Tyler Childers stuff.
Yeah.
And Oliver Anthony will pop on there. I can't listen to him on Pandora because it's a very obvious difference, because you'll listen to Coulter Wall or Tyler Childers, and then as soon as Oliver Anthony's song comes on, it's a big difference in the quality of the music. And I don't know, maybe just because
so you do see a difference.
I absolutely see a difference. Yeah. And it might, and I'm gonna toot my own horn here. It may be because I do have a musician background.
Right.
I've done some recording, and I've sat in front of a stupid analog mixer trying to record a song and burn it on a CD. I'd go sit out in my truck and listen to it, and it'd sound like shit. So I'd go back in and try to adjust some things and then try to redo it. And, and so I could definitely hear the difference.
Well, there's a part of that where Tyler Childers is a good example, especially I would listen to a song today that I hadn't listened to in a while.
Yeah.
And he's doing it with somebody else, and I have to think it. But anyway, the song, it sounds very grainy.
Yeah.
And so at the very beginning of the song, it sounds like he starts and then he starts over.
Oh, you're talking about freaking Nose to the Grindstone, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. He's like, and I love that song because it literally does. I know exactly. He goes, nose to the grind. He doesn't clap at the beginning of each song. I don't know if he's clapping. I don't know if he's slapping them, but there's a. Yeah, this is Nose to the Grindstone.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
And he starts strumming it again. It's like, yeah, and I actually kind of love that because it shows a little bit of a rawness to it. I think that's kind of what they were going for.
Well, and I think that, I think it was when I was listening to Oliver Anthony that's not his name, but I was listening to him on Joe Rogan. Like, I think that's one of the things they talked about is that music has gotten so, synthesized. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yep. Like, the big deal in rap was auto-tune. Mm-hmm. So they, had certain rappers making fun of other rappers because they're using auto-tune.
Right.
And yet auto-tune is really pretty accepted.
Absolutely.
In the industry. Mm-hmm. And so you think, but in the reason all that starts to become, I think they were talking about it, is because now you have this AI, like Chat GPT. Uh-huh. So what they were saying is that, and I actually paid for this. I paid for my wife to get a song, and I wrote the lyrics.
Yep.
The normal services, though, you just kind of tell them some ideas, and then they turn around and they make you a song, right?
Right.
Well, I wrote the lyrics and said, put some music to this and whatever, and I paid for that. Well, in the future, what they're saying is you can ask, Chat GPT to write you a song to your wife, whatever, romantic, here you go, and do the same concept.
Right.
And it will spit out better lyrics,
The fear is that we're going to get to a place where you can't discern the difference between the actual artist or AI itself. And there's kind of this discussion of, will people want the AI version because it's actually going to get to a point where it's even better? Or are they going to appreciate the fact that, no, this, like, Post Malone actually wrote this song and performed, and I like that it came from a human.
Right.
Rather than a computer.
I actually think so Post Malone was on there, I think, recently too.
Yep.
And I think they talked about that. Because he was, I wouldn't say scared is the right word, but he was like,
just concerned.
I know that Chat GPT can write a better song than me.
Yep.
And then it's going to learn to put music to it, and it's going to make it. So we're going to be just listening to a bunch of AI music.
And what's funny is that we're going to, until it gets better and it's able to trick us, like, I've noticed that I can catch especially if it's somebody that I'm familiar with, like Joe Rogan, for example. Mm-hmm. A lot of times you'll see a video where he's saying something, he's talking about something really interesting. It's not even bizarre, but you pay attention to the way the video's put together. You're like, oh, this is AI. And because there's so much of Joe Rogan's voice out there that you can basically make him say
That's
anything.
what he said.
Yeah, you can make him say
There's
anything.
all kinds of, he was talking, you probably heard of that when he was talking to another guy who was, I think either, in on Chat GPT whenever it came out. And he was, so his kid, I can't remember the age, but let's say his kid was like 15. He said by the time he's like out of high school, because it started how many ever years ago with my kid, listening to my kid telling it this and that.
Yep.
He said it's going to know him better than anybody.
Yep. And
it will be able to like really cater everything to what his needs, and he will know his personality and what he expects. And it's like he will like almost be the parent of the kid.
Yeah.
And because he's grown up his whole life with that.
Isn't that eerie?
Oh, it's crazy.
It's weird.
He also I might have mentioned this to you before, but he tells us still like, and already our education system is jacked up. We have one of the worst education systems. And it's outdated is the point. Mm-hmm. It's just super outdated. We've been doing this. I mean, we know this. It's like talk to your kids and find out, oh my gosh, we did those same things. The only difference is we've got rid of the climbing rope and we don't play dodgeball anymore. But it's pretty much the same basic deal. Right. And he was saying, man, watch what he said that you can tell Chat GPT, you are Abraham Lincoln.
Yep.
And I want you to tell us about your life, and I want to learn about you. And then it goes out and finds every single thing ever done about, and then even gets the voice that it thinks is there.
Crazy would that be?
And then it starts talking at crazy accuracy about history.
Yeah.
Hearing it, quote, from his mouth.
Yep. And that's going to be wild.
Instead of from some teacher standing up there.
And here's a crazy concept. It's going to be one of those things where we're actually going to invent time travel, but it's not going to look like we think it. It's not going to be getting in some clunky box and going back into time.
Yeah.
We're literally going to be able to ask AI, hey, take me back to the 1500s, and you're going to have virtual reality along with ChatGPT, and if
virtual reality can catch up with ChatGPT,
you're like, hey, I want to see the gladiators, and you're going to be in the freaking Roman Colosseum. There's going to be a sword in your hand and a lion coming at you, and it's going to be time travel, because it's going to be, even if it's not accurate, it's going to feel so real. You're not going to be able to discern the difference. They already talk about how like it's going to be soon on video games and virtual reality. You're not going to be able to discern between that and reality. And that's going to become a problem.
Let me tell you, I just like really thought of something when you're saying all that, and you're right. This is pretty profound and deep, but right now, like, I mean, how many times, like, have you tried to, hey, you don't have iPhone, but hey Siri, blah, blah, blah. Right. It's answering right now. It's looking.
Yep.
Okay. Let me tell you what, me neither. But let me tell you something. I will say whatever, call Shawn. And oh my God, I must be from India or, the Middle East.
Yeah.
Because it does not understand one thing I say.
Right.
And some people, you could say, oh, it's because you live in Oklahoma and you have this hick. No, I mean, our accents aren't that crazy. And yet this thing can never, I would say, rarely ever get it right.
And so how much are you into conspiracy theories?
Well, but hold on. Let me finish this thought. I want to hear your conspiracy theory. But let me finish this thought. The point is movement. So another way to say is action.
Mm-hmm.
Action. So I can tell her all kinds of things.
Sure.
But can she do what I really want her to do?
Right.
Read that email to me. Do this. Okay. Uh-huh. Can she really do it? And the answer is no.
Right.
She's not very good at it.
Right.
Truthfully.
Yep.
So think about the same thing. At this point, voice is not there because she can't understand Burl, I promise you, in 100 years.
Right.
But yet I can type it into a computer and Chat GPT gets it quick, right? Because we're on the same language. So we're missing the verbal seal. It's way out there. It's not there yet.
So I think.
But let me say one more thing. It is missing the action part.
Yeah.
It is completely mixing the action. So think about a robot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right now, you really have the brains. It's pretty smart. It can figure it out. Chat GPT is the brains, right? But the brain can't make movement, doesn't know how, can't get that to work.
Right.
And it can't understand verbal, which is hearing very well.
Right.
It's behind. And even though you see the commercials that make it sound like they can literally do anything we ask, the truth is in everyday world, you add a little bit of noise, you add a little bit of something, you add me not pronunciating words.
Right.
We were talking about this today. That's funny. It's because think about this. It's like when you over punctuate, if you're, let's say you've been out drinking, you don't want your wife to know you've been drinking. Here's what you do. You talk slow. You talk slow and you really pronunciate every single thing. Okay. In your head, right. I'm not drunk. I'm not drunk. Okay. But you know what I'm saying, right? And that's exactly, if you did that, maybe the voice, maybe Siri, maybe whoever would get it.
All right. So I like...
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
We've got the brain.
So here's the thing. I like conspiracy theories because I think they're fun. And here's my conspiracy theory on that. I think that the technology is absolutely there. And the example is, if people up north are not having that same problem, they can just tell Siri to do whatever and it happens lickety-split. I'm going to challenge that there's enough of us communicating that and it would be such an easy grab for them that you can grab any amount of conversation that is happening to us hick countries and you could get Siri to understand us. And I think it's easy. I don't think it's a problem. Here's the conspiracy theory. And I pulled it out of my rear because I think it's funny. It's a conspiracy from the government because typically if you have a hick accent, you probably lean more conservative. And it's a way to keep conservatives behind the times because it's not Siri who's behind. We're behind now because we're not giving the same access to technology that your left-leaning people are given. It's a way to...
Oh, my God.
It's a way to keep your conservative...
It'll blow your mind.
It's a way to keep your conservative side
I got you.
behind.
But I'm going to blow your mind.
All right, let's do it.
Look this up. Basically, look this up.
Okay.
It's there. Okay. So they believe the way they did that exact same thing to the South is they ran around barefoot and they had a parasite in their foot.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They had a parasite. Dumb Southerns are dumb, whatever. Okay. And that parasite is what caused it. When that parasite went away, that the 100%. Stigma was still there.
Yep. Absolutely. 1,000%.
But look at that whole theory,
exactly
conspiracy behind that.
Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about.
People wanted them to stay that way.
Right. So that's funny.
So
there's your conspiracy. I had another conspiracy.
Now, is that a really conspiracy or is that facts, what I just said?
Yours is facts as far as the parasite.
I thought so.
The conspiracy
is it made us look dumb?
No, the conspiracy is they did it on purpose. The fact is that that in the South you tended to be more poor, so you typically ran around barefoot, and because we ran around barefoot in the South, we were more susceptible to this parasite, and this parasite made you lethargic, it made you stupid, it slowed down your brain development, so that's where you get the barefoot overalls, drool coming out of the side of the mouth, Southern hick person. And that's kind of how that happened. And it's not even saying a conspiracy to say that we still have that persona on us because that's still attached. The conspiracy is, did they do it on purpose? And did they want that to happen?
Yeah.
That's where the conspiracy comes.
It does align with what you're saying.
Absolutely. But think about it. It's not that far of a stretch though, right? So here's an example. It's a little bit, it kind of falls in line with this, and we're going to get way off subject here. So I was listening to people talk about this, where what's funny is all this immigration that's happening at the border of Texas. And essentially what Texas did is they started putting the immigrants on buses and sending them up north, right? And sending them up to New York. Well, what's funny is that New York has a law that basically requires them to house any immigrants that come to New York. And immigrants have found out about this because of the stunt that happened in Texas. So the immigrants now are just going straight to New York, essentially. I'm probably wrong about so New York's getting flooded with immigrants, right? And they can't turn any away, except they're working on turning away one group. If you're from Venezuela, they have an agreement with the country of Venezuela where they are deporting you if you're from Venezuela. Do you know why? What's your guess? Why would they deport people from Venezuela, but everybody else is getting housed?
Is this drugs or coffee or what? Because
Venezuela is a failed socialist country.
Yeah.
People who are fleeing Venezuela. people who are fleeing Venezuela
Mm-hmm.
are more likely to vote Republican, whereas your other immigrants are going to more likely vote Democrat. And that's always been the conspiracy of why the left is so lenient on immigration, is because they want as many people as they can, because immigrants up to the left are allowed to vote. Even if you're an illegal immigrant, you're legally allowed to vote. That's what they want it to be. But Venezuelans are going to vote right. So get them out of here.
All right. You've reminded me. I'm pretty sure I've told you this before, but a lot of things you said made me like, I want to get this me recorded saying this. Okay. And I want to know the conspiracy behind it.
All right.
Okay. Because there is one. There has to be.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let me tell you, and by the way, I should get paid for this because I did contact Apple about this. I should get paid for this. I mean, big. I really should, Shawn.
I'm listening. I'm intrigued.
You know, you're not an iPhone user.
Nope.
I know that, but you're very familiar with the iPhone.
Yeah.
And, I don't know how many millions of users use the iPhone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, these things are technologically advanced.
No,
Like I've never, they are. Of course they are. Think about it. They started it, right? I want to know something. And think about it. You used to have a little button where you go home.
Uh-huh.
Yes, you have all kinds of features that are completely gone. And you know what? The one feature that is not gone is that little toggle switch. And so there's a little toggle switch, and this is what again, you don't have an iPhone, but that just mutes it and unmutes it.
Right.
Okay. Vibrate or not.
Right.
Not. Okay. And by the way, you have a up and down button up there that all it does is actually make the vibrate, I guess, higher or lower.
Okay.
And make the ring higher and lower.
Right.
And then you have a toggle.
So it's your volume button.
Okay. So if you know anything about Steve Jobs, if you read his autobiography, if you follow Apple in one little bit, any of that, then you know that everything that he wants it sleek, clean. Mm-hmm. He wants no buttons.
Ep.
He wants none of that stuff. And that has been from the very beginning.
Right.
Just think about the difference with iPads and now they're Macs and whatever. Okay. Right. So his design, you buy a Mac right now, it's a very expensive computer. You get this big screen.
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
And keyboard and keyboard. I don't even think you don't get a mouse. Maybe you get I don't think so.
I'm not sure.
The point is you get very little.
Sure.
And that's it. There's hardly any buttons on this thing. Right?
Right.
And yet we have a toggle switch. Now go to your vehicle and I want you to pick out how many toggle switches you have versus just something you touch, a little button.
Right.
This has toggle switch.
Right.
Okay. Toggle switch. I used whenever that's the very vehicles that we wanted to add like cool lights. We put a toggle switch. You can buy them for $1.
Yeah, I got them in my Jeep.
It's like what you're calling about, like analog. It is not technical. It is.
Right.
It goes up and down. You can hear it if you really listened. Why is that still there? And seriously, why is that still there?
Now, it's me.
Remove the toggle switch. Just do that.
Right. So
how much does this toggle switch cost?
I think, and here would be my best guess on as to why, is Apple wants to be known for your business space, right? If you're legitimately working in a business, you're running a business, you're supporting Apple, you're using Apple products. Right. And let's say you're a busy person and your phone is your main point of contact. Mm. Like if I'm getting hold of Burl, who is the CEO of this company, right, I need to call him. Burl needs to be able to hear his phone go off. But Burl's fixing to step into a meeting where he doesn't want to hear his phone off. Yeah. Burl doesn't want to have to pull out his phone, unlock his screen, type his password, or do the stupid face unlock, find the app, turn it off. It's really handy just to reach in your pocket, click, and hit that little toggle switch, and all of a sudden your phone's on silent. And then meeting over, unclick, click. That would be...
that's the best explanation I've ever heard or thought of. I mean, that's really a good explanation. But here's the thing. It's like, dude, you have an Android, right? Mm-hmm. Does it have any toggle switch on it?
No toggle switch.
None. Okay, but I'll even add to this. But I want to make it clear to Apple and whoever else is listening. If you just remove the toggle switch, and I'm going to tell you where to put it.
Right.
I'm not the toggle switch, but the power, the control. Mm-hmm. You just remove that off every iPhone. Dude, how much does that save the company?
Yeah.
Period. Now, but I'm going to solve the other problem. On above that is up, and it only really has one deal. If it's phone volume up, phone volume down, it's your volume up and down button.
Right.
Okay. I've been in actually a car, and this isn't even a brand new car, and this was for anybody listening that cares about it, is a Cadillac Escalade. And you actually, to turn up the volume, you just pull your finger across the screen like this.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
And it and it automatically moves just with your finger. Okay. And when you get all the way down to the bottom, it's muted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's muted.
Right.
Another way to say that is could be vibrate.
Right.
Muted. Now, some people would say, well, I want no vibrate. No, that's ridiculous. Nobody gets that. Nobody uses that.
Right.
So now on that other side, just make a little swipe down and your volume goes down. And you go all the way down to vibrate. You're done.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, some person, here's why they don't think that's a good idea, because it's in your pocket. You bump it.
Right.
It's going to move. Right.
Right.
And I get that. I get it. So maybe you don't even have to do that slide up and down thing, because it doesn't work like that.
Right.
But think about it. Your phone is in your pocket right now. Mine has a full screen and it's not calling people and not doing anything. And so it's not being affected by me moving around.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Right.
But even if you don't want to do that, just leave what's there and do the same thing. Get rid of the toggle switch.
So here's my rebuttal to that. I'm playing devil's advocate on this, because Apple, they're into making money. That's it. That's what they care about. And let's say, you've got your toggle switch. We've got this toggle switch dilemma. And this guy walks into the CEO of Apple and he says, hey, I've got this great idea. This guy Burl from Elk City was talking about this, getting rid of our toggle switch. And I think he's got a great idea. We need to do X, Y, and Z to make this happen. He goes, that's interesting. What do you think it's going to cost to put into our next line of cell phones? And he runs the numbers, $4 billion. And then he looks over to his little assistant in the corner. How much does our toggle switch cost? 12 cents. Get out of my office.
Yeah. Dude, it hit me like a train. You're right. But I'll say this. And honestly, Shawn, this is so funny, because somebody from Apple ever listens to this. It takes me like one bit serious. But here's the funny part about that. Apple is not Dell. Apple is not HP. You go buy down the Dilly Willy.
Yeah.
And if you want to be those HP and you want to be Dell, then absolutely, I want to pay $500 versus $1,500 for my computer. And on top of that, I want to make sure that that you still, it's just,
so there's something really funny, and I'm trying to remember.
I'm right though, right?
Yes.
In other words, Apple's supposed to be up here.
Right, exactly.
If you're worried about a 12-cent,
but
whatever.
They're so far ahead in the realm, they don't have to worry about something like a toggle switch. And it's Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
He tells a story about how the gosh, I don't even remember. I'm going to butcher the story, but essentially, it was like a big guy who was way high up in Apple, and a guy who was with Microsoft. They were like traveling together or something. And this is back when the Zune still existed. Do you remember the Zune?
Yeah.
It was Microsoft's version of an iPod.
Yeah.
And the Microsoft guy was talking about, the Zune is actually far superior to the iPod.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
It's way better. And he goes on to list all the reasons why the Zune was actually a much better product than the iPod was.
Right.
He's like, yeah, I think you're right. But it didn't matter because of the way, and I'm not even sure what it was that Apple did that made the iPod so much more successful. But Apple's not concerned necessarily with having something that's so technologically advanced that it crushes their competition. It has to do with how they've marketed their product.
Yeah.
And I've heard somebody say this, and I 100% agree with them. And it's one of the reasons I don't like Apple. Not to say that it's a bad product. It's just for whatever reason, it just doesn't suit me. Android has always suited me really well.
Yeah.
Apple is not a technology company. Apple is a fashion company.
Yeah.
Because it's a status symbol to have Apple. You want the Apple AirPods, and you want to pull up the iPhone with your friends. There's a really funny clip of, do you know who is it? Matt Rife. He's the comedian, young guy. He's a good looking young man. He's funny, and he's real good about bantering with the audience. And that's kind of a new trend going on in comedy right now, is that the audience wants to be bantered with. They want engagement from the comedian more so than just them telling a story. And he's nailing that. He's so good at it. He's hysterical. Well, there's this one where this girl who's heckling him finally kind of gets kicked out. And he's kind of being a good sport, but she forgets her phone. And he reaches down at her table, grabs her phone, and she goes, and she's got an Android. Ew. There's this, Apple has managed to create a stigma that if you don't use Apple, you're kind of a loser. Yeah. And hand raised, kind of a loser over here because I don't use Apple. Right. So that's actually their marketing approach. They're not so much concerned with the technology side as it is if they've got the public. If you're anybody, you've got an iPhone. Just look at the latest. Did you see any of the videos of like the latest update on the iPhone? It's so funny. There's some videos out there of people making fun of the new iPhone because they changed everything. They changed the charger. So you have to buy like all new stuff.
Yeah, seriously,
absolutely. I need to pull up. See, this is where we need to have your setup here with the TV playing and the cameras on, because I could pull up a video, put it up on the screen, and we laugh our butts off because it would play right to this. It would improve this conversation tenfold. Anyways, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
No, I mean, it's crazy, but I'm going to tell you something that Apple does not want to hear. And again, I told them, I mean, I really believe it, Shawn, that what I'm saying is right. Okay? About this iPhone thing. But let me tell you, this is the sad news. Apple is going downhill, and it's going downhill hard. Okay. Because the whole thing in the beginning was the music. Like, I know it's computer, but I'm saying that really threw them over the edge.
Right.
Is the music, right? And they made a historic deal.
Absolutely.
So they smart, right? It wasn't the computer. But then guess what? It's like, think about what they were doing next. Now it's the iPhone. Mm-hmm. Now it's the iPad. Now it's the Mac. The point is that it's always something revolutionary. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it starts it. And even though others are better, it's so revolutionary that that Microsoft can never keep up. Right. But here's the problem. Apple, what is Apple's next? And you know what I think they've invested a lot is Apple TV. That thing sucks.
Yeah.
I have it.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I'm like, no, you're not going to revolutionize TV. And you know what I'm saying? That's completely, what are they going to say? We're going to make the best TVs?
Right.
Dude, we're not even going to have a TV 20 years from now.
If I were a betting man, my money would be on Apple is putting a lot of money, a lot of resources, and a lot of hush-hush until they get it figured out. They're going to have something big in this AI thing. There's going to be something they come up with that.
I actually do think you're right.
If you don't have the next latest, greatest Apple thing. And here's the thing.
I'm telling you, brother, if I want to know that I really want to know if what you're saying is right, because I'm telling you, I think
there's going to be something there's going to be something there that's going to be the next big thing.
But I'll tell you, if that doesn't happen, they're done. In other words, if they don't come up with something like that.
Yeah. So who replaces Apple though?
Man, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm telling you, Apple, I don't know.
You know, I'm not so sure that
they are not as innovative they used to be. They're just not. I just don't see
They don't have to be.
Yeah.
And that's kind of back to the point of Apple being fashion product more so than a technology product.
I don't know. I'll prove your point again because I agree with that. Think about, it's like, oh my God, I just lost the train of thought. But it's like, oh my God. Anyway, I'll think about it.
How's your cigar?
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's yours?
It's good. This is part of a previous pack that I had in there. Actually, just some more simple cigars. Yeah. I want to take a cigar rolling class. I want to learn how to roll my own.
I mean, I don't know if I have the patience for
it. I think I'd love it. I think it would be, I've seen a couple videos kind of showing a little bit of the process, not in any depth, but there's a class you can take on Tulsa. It's like a 2-hour class and they'll teach you how to roll cigars, and there's like a mold. So, you know, I
wonder how much cheaper that would be. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know, because you can buy, you could buy if you were serious enough about it, because you could pick out the particular type of tobacco you like. So you could order it by bulk, and then you could roll your own cigars. There's guys that roll their own cigars and kind of have their own little side hustle of they sell their own cigars.
Yeah.
And so I think it's kind of cool. And I think it would just, I like there's kind of almost a classiness to it. And I kind of feel like if you got to a place where you knew how to roll your own cigars, it would almost be like people who are really into wine and actually can make their own wine, and they're good at it. I don't know. I think it's kind of like a next level. Like you have a bunch of guys over and you're trading cigars. Say, hey guys, try one of mine. This is one I rolled. Well, and it's like, well, what's it like? And I would be able to say it's this tobacco from here, and here. It's been aged this long, and it's this, you know.
I'll tell you something. I was so disappointed about something. It wasn't this time when we got cigars at this place, but it was the last time. It's like this tobacco shop,
sure,
right? I was so disappointed because, like, at this point, they just let me open the cabinet, look, and I'm like, and they have the little, price there, and I'm trying to honestly find like best one for my price. I'm learning about this thing, and it's very unorganized. So I'm like, oh Lord, some of it's not priced, some of it is, and then some are crazy, like with 50, with 60 a cigar. I'm like, okay, I don't want to accidentally pull that one, but so I go down the bottom where it's real messy, and I see Cuban cigars.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
they're not real Cubans, but yeah.
I'm like, I tell the guy, it's like, wait a minute.
Yep.
This guy's, not from here.
Right.
Not from America. And he's like, I'm telling him, like, those are illegal in America, right? I thought they were illegal. And he's like, oh no, they're fake. Yep. And I'm like, oh God, you lost all credibility now. Cause I'm like, I'm thinking this stuff we're smoking, that I'm buying that's $15 or $12. Yep. I'm thinking this stuff is, a real whatever. And now you're telling me, okay, this is a Cuban fake cigar.
Yep.
So what kind of tobacco am I getting there? And how much that thing cost?
And there's actually a lot of talk about that of, because back in the day, Cubans were the cigar, they were the gold standard, I guess. Yeah. And there's actually kind of a funny story about JFK, right before he put the Cuban is it embargo? Am I saying that right? Where
he bought
like 10,000. He bought like 10,000 Cuban cigars, and which I did done the same thing. Let's not act like I'm high and mighty. I did done the same thing. But supposedly there are a lot of companies who attempt to recreate Cubans,
right?
And from what I understand, they get really close, like because apparently Cubans aren't all that special.
I mean, you just think about how silly that is. That we're still now. I think it just goes the embargo or whatever was like 1960 or something. I don't know. The point is like when they did that, and I'm like, can we not get over this and us legalize Cuban cigars?
Right.
I'm like, to me that just sounds
sure.
It's like let's make that concession.
Sure.
But do you think Cuba like secretly wants it to be banned in the United States and they can make more money off of it?
I don't know. That's a good question. Because I think the thing is, especially now, I feel like cigars are, I don't know if it's something I just didn't know about or if it's actually kind of making a bit of a comeback because it seems like cigars are kind of coming back up in popularity again. And I think the way shipping is now, God, Cuba would benefit tremendously.
Oh, they would have people go crazy.
They would have a brand new industry. It would be like one of their top grossing domestic products kind of thing. And
you think about some things are just flat out political. You can't explain them any other way. That one right there, I want you to think about, like, explain to me why that's not political.
Right.
If there's ever been a political thing.
My lighter.
I'm like, it's a flashlight. Where did it? Oh, there it is. I couldn't see.
I haven't tried this one before. It's kind of interesting.
My point is, it's political. That's it. There's nothing else you can say. It's not for money. It's political.
If you want another one, I got a whole bunch too. So
pretty night I think it's been the warmest night in like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, this one's been dipped in something.
Is that what it is?
Yep.
It's dipping in something.
Oh shit. Yeah, this one's been sweetened with something. I found I actually don't like these as much.
And the way I can more or something.
I can taste it. I don't taste it. I taste whatever the sweetness is around my lips. This one's not bad though. It's not overbearing. But yeah, I find I like the just your natural tobacco flavor.
You know, I know this sounds ridiculous, but that's another thing. Try to decipher like what you just said.
Yep.
Try to decipher that looking at cigarette boxes.
Sure. And some of that comes down to paying attention to like what brands, there's certain, so one guy described it to me kind of like coffee. You've got your light roast, your dark roast, your medium roast, and that's very much true with cigars. Like a lighter cigar has a little bit lighter flavor. The darker cigars definitely have a stronger, at least what I've experienced, definitely a stronger tobacco. Like it's almost a little bit bitter. They're a little bit tougher. You almost kind of have to let yourself adjust to it. And then there's certain parts of the world where the tobacco's grown. That particular type of tobacco has a different flavor. One of the things about Cubans apparently is that depending on which side of the island that the tobacco's grown on, it has a different flavor. So it's the same tobacco. It's coming from Cuba, but on this side of the island, the tobacco has this kind of a flavor. And then on this side of the island, the tobacco has this kind of flavor. So so I'm still learning a lot. Like, you've got your pop, and then what you'll do is you'll kind of find a brand that you'll like. You're like, oh man, I like this one. And then you'll come back around to it. And you're like, oh, I remember this. I like this one. Mm-hmm. One of them I've found that I like are, there's a couple that have stuck out to me. Monte Cristos. Those are pretty good. And then, Rocky Patels. I really like the Rocky Patels. There's one where when you smell it, I love to smell the cigar before I light it, just because I'm just curious how it smells. And, the Rocky Patel, it almost has a hint of like chocolate to it, the way it smells, but it's not dipped in anything. There's just something about that particular tobacco that has almost a sweeter scent to it.
I don't know. It's kind of crazy. I told you I had bad experience with cigars.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yep. Man. It's very sweet. Like very, 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 very sweet.
That Bob just pested that horse.
Oh man. Conspiracy theories. They're fun, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. This one almost has a, like I smell it and it makes me think of cologne. Like, I don't know if you got that or not, because like anytime I smell like a cigar, it's like, tobacco. Yeah. So much so, it's funny. My stepdad smoked, my entire life that I've known him.
Yeah.
And, I've hung out with him all the time when he's smoking, and to me, it just smells like a cigarette. Like it stinks like a cigarette. Since I've started smoking cigars, I can smell the tobacco in his cigarettes now. Like I'm able to pull that flavor out. Like I can smell it. I was like, I can sift through it and I can actually smell the tobacco in it. It's kind of funny.
Do cigars, like if you kept them at that perfect humidity, is it like last forever or what?
I don't know. I think,
like you also like wine,
right?
ages.
I think it has I could be honest, I couldn't tell you. I do know that if you're not careful and if you don't rotate them, they can mold. So, you've got that, especially like if your humidity's off, but keeping your humidity is obviously important. You can have too much humidity and they get, I had one do this to me where I'm assuming it was because of the humidity and not because it was a bad cigar. I couldn't draw it. Like,
I had one like that.
It was like
Seriously?
Was like a thick.
Was it with the pointy tipped or
no? It wasn't the pointy tipped.
This one was.
Yeah.
No matter how far
I've got one that I want to try, but yeah, I did. I freaking cut it.
Oh, I was like, felt like I was like.
Yeah, it's like trying to like a thick shake. You can't I could not draw.
It's funny
it's
you brought that up
weird
because I was going to ask you about that. Because I just got with the point. Okay, I didn't cut enough. Okay, yep. I promise you, I was down.
Yep, I did. I even left it at, like I've noticed sometimes if I don't finish the cigar and I leave it for later, it'll dry out a little bit, and I'll notice because then it's like sucking through a straw, and you're sucking air because it's kind of thinned out some, so it's almost too easy to draw on.
Right.
So I was like, I'm going to leave this. I'm going to come back and try it later. And it was still I cut it some more and it would not, I finally just had to give up on it. And it could be, it was rolled too tight. Like it got compact too much, or the humidity got really screwed up on it.
It has to be like this perfect balance, I guess. I mean, science behind just.
Mm-hmm.
before it's too much to squeeze it.
And what's fascinating about that, like how old are cigars? Like I'd like to know like when.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You know, how far back do cigars go? You think about freaking cowboys out in the West with a big old fat stogie. It's like, where did you get somebody rolled this and knew, like, how long did it take somebody to perfect the concept of a cigar? You know, and it's a kind of a simple, someone was like, I'll just wad up all the tobacco and then just put a leaf around it. And it's interesting to think about the things that have been perfected without our technology. I think that's more fascinating than anything. Yeah. I think maybe once the sweetness wears off, it's going to be pretty good. I don't like the sweetness because it's so sweet that I can taste it on my lips. Yeah. And I miss out on the tobacco, but it's getting better. Maybe that sweetness will wear off. And then there's that hint of cologne again. I can almost like taste it. It's kind of interesting. I've never had one like that before. So maybe what we need to do, Burl, is we need to find us a spot around the city where it's like an office building, like a commercial building, something that we get for dirt cheap.
Right.
That would have multiple uses, that we could rent out spaces, but we have an office there. And it could be our YouTube studio. That way, whenever we want to do a podcast, each of us just have to make the hour and a half drive. And, you know, if our wives want to come, we give them a little shopping money, go have fun. Me and Burl, we're going to go do our podcast. And it would be a cool way, because then it's a little bit easier to have guests because we're centrally located, you know. And then on top of that,
you've been to, like, I think it's called Uptown, like in Oklahoma City.
I don't know.
You know, some of that area, it's like, oh my God, that's exactly what's going on.
But on top of that, so you could have some other spaces that we could rent out. Yeah. But then our office space, we could actually write it off as like a business expense. So we can.
I mean, I'm seeing it. I think it's like there's an area of town down there that's like that.
Yeah.
It's like completely like that.
No. Yeah. Wow. All right.
What are you doing?
Looking for conversation starters. I'm trying to see if there's something that triggers a topic here.
Saying men should be dangerous. By dangerous, that implies I should be ready to threaten someone, to hurt someone.
This is cool. And see if you've ever heard this. So,
saying men should be dangerous. By dangerous, that implies I should be ready to threaten someone, to hurt somebody.
No, you should be capable of it. But that doesn't mean you should use it. There's nothing to you otherwise. Like if you're not a formidable force, there's no morality in your self-control. If you're incapable of violence, not being violent isn't a virtue. People who teach martial arts know this full well, right? If you learn a martial art, you learn to be dangerous, but simultaneously you learn to control it. Both of those come together. And the combination of that capacity for danger and the capacity for control is what brings about the virtue. Otherwise, you confuse weakness with moral virtue. I'm harmless, therefore I'm good. It's like, no, that isn't how it works. That isn't how it works at all. If you're harmless, you're just weak. And if you're weak, you're not going to be good. You can't be. Because it takes strength to be good. It's very difficult to be good.
So his implication there is that in order to be good, you have to be dangerous. What do you think?
Oh, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man.
You know, he has a Bible verse that he likes to use to really back that up too. And it's the meek shall inherit the earth. And he talks about going into that, and he's like, man, I really don't like that. I really don't like the way that's worded. So he goes on this deep dive of trying to get down to the root of what does this actually say? What does it actually mean? And his position is that a better translation is that those who have a sword and know how to use it, but don't, will inherit the earth.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I think that, oh, God, I don't know. It just makes sense.
It's funny because, like, one of the funny things that I always thought, becoming a dad, it's really interesting how much it increased my capacity for murder.
Yeah.
You know, being a father, it's like, man, there's a funny video that goes around, and it's essentially asking women, and be honest, I don't think they were asking women from the South, because I feel like our women would respond very differently. Right. But they're asking a series of mothers, would you kill for your child?
Yeah.
And it's like, it shows clip after clip after clip, and every woman kind of has a kill. I mean, I don't know if I could kill. And they're like, I'd do anything that was legal. And, you know, it's like it's like a bunch of women who like really buckled at that. I don't know if I could kill somebody. And then it's always funny because it's duetted by some dude. And probably the funniest ones is like, what? Yes, I would kill you, then bring you back to life, explain to you why I killed you, and then kill you again. And he goes, I'd kill for your kids, you know, kind of thing. And I was like, that's how I feel about it. Like, there's something about a kid. It's like, I'd absolutely, I wouldn't lose any sleep over it.
I know. That's why people are so silly about the rules and law. They're like, I'd never kill somebody. What if somebody broke into hell? Oh, yeah, I'd kill. You know, it's like, you come on.
Yeah.
It's just, in other words, you just can't judge it by that.
There's so here's a real controversial topic. This is just for fun. Do you think that women's rights actually exist?
Oh God!
I'm setting him up. I'm setting Burl up. I want to see how he responds to this. Do you think women's rights actually exist?
Yes.
Okay. Here's the argument, and it's really funny. The argument is that women's rights don't actually exist because who do women need in order to enforce their rights?
Oh God.
For the record, I do believe women's rights exist.
Yeah,
but it's a funny concept. There was this video where this guy, he was essentially kind of having that back and forth with this girl. Is basically saying women's rights basically don't exist, in that if your rights get infringed upon, who do you call? A man to come and enforce your rights. And all of a sudden, if men just decided that we weren't going to enforce your rights anymore, women would no longer have rights. And I don't know, it's funny. Not saying any of it's true. It's a funny thing to say.
Yeah. But I think it goes back to, it's so easy to say, oh, I don't believe in guns, but I believe in eating, you know,
right?
Or kill, you know what I'm saying?
Right. It's kind of like the argument of, you know, you don't believe in guns, but if your house gets broken into, you're going to call somebody with a gun and pray they show up.
Yeah. I mean, everybody knows that you just can't take it away. You can't take away what's already there.
Who do you think is going to be our next president?
Lord, man, oh man, I would like for the Kennedy guy.
Yeah, to be honest, me too.
I really would.
Unfortunately,
you know what that
I don't think he
is
stands a chance.
In the political BS world, you're libertarian. Mm-hmm. That's what they would tell you.
Yeah, well, he's. Did you know he's officially running as a libertarian? Or
I know, but you know, a third party never wins.
Independent, but yeah,
they never win.
No, they'll never win, and that's what sucks. And so here's the only positive side to RFK, if I'm saying those initials right, running as an independent. He will pull enough people away from Biden, so that Trump will actually stand a chance to getting back in office. And I'm not saying Trump's the best case scenario, but I'll certainly take it over what we're dealing with now.
Oh my God, it's just so crazy. That's who I think should be the next president. Seriously.
RFK?
Yeah.
Oh, I 100% agree.
I'm telling you. But, Lord, if that's but let me tell you, if, I don't know, we're screwed either way. We truly are. But I think Biden somehow would just pull it out that last little bit.
How do they keep him alive?
I don't know.
What are they pumping into him?
And that, people hate Camellia or whatever.
Oh my gosh. They hated her. They hated her before that.
They hate her. So let me tell you, I don't know what would be crazier.
It's a weird
to get a person that everybody hates to be pretty close to the next president.
Yeah.
You guys, because that's the next president.
Oh my gosh.
Seriously.
Yeah. It's bonkers.
I mean, that's
could you imagine the first woman president being the most despised?
It's like, think about it. If there was
how sad. So think about that for a second. How sad of a day will it be for America when the first African American female president is hated because she's such a terrible person. Yeah. Because when we have our first female president, and I believe it'll happen in my lifetime, I really do. That should be that should be a great day for America, right? That should be we should celebrate that like when we celebrated Obama getting elected, having the first African-American president. Right. It should be a time in our country when we all came together and we recognized that, wow, what a great time for America that we as a country elected a woman as president. How crappy is it going to be that if a woman becomes president by default and she's got the lowest ratings of any vice president ever? That would be really sad.
Here's the funny, crazy thought, conspiracy all the way. Okay.
Damn, I'm here for it.
That she becomes president by Biden dying or whatever. Okay. We don't want him to die, but you get my point.
Sure.
She becomes president. Guess what? Then you have every single churchgoer thinking she's the Antichrist.
Oh gosh.
I swear.
It's every election cycle is the Antichrist. Ever since I was a kid, Bush was the Antichrist. Obama was the Antichrist. Everybody's been the Antichrist. Trump was the Antichrist. And it's the same thing over and over again. It's the next Hitler. It's the next Antichrist. It's the end of the world. And that's the funniest thing to me is that ever since I was a little kid, I remember my dad's side of the family especially go in full on panic mode for 2 years while we're getting ready for the next presidential cycle. It's absurd. Yeah, it's so crazy.
I swear,
the Antichrist.
Right.
So no, and what's going to be funny about that is that your churches would get more bent out of shape because there's probably something that says the Antichrist is a he. So the fact that it's a woman, it's like she can't be the Antichrist.
Right.
She's a woman.
God,
then
right.
you're going to have that stupid argument in the church again.
Oh no, no.
We should reenact that, Burl.
This gets worse.
We should do a skit on.
This gets worse.
Oh no,
it does. I mean, here's going to be just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it's going to top it over. It's going to just fall right over because you're going to have a few blacks and they're going to start being loud and then it's going to say it's all the whites and oh my God.
That's going to be funny.
And then you have
the proper term is African American.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like,
his Siri doesn't work correctly, so he's a little behind the times.
Our next president's going to be I can't even say it.
Kamala Harris. There's a funny bit, and obviously it's Joe Rogan again. I'm basically just a Joe Rogan highlight reel. He's got Tim Dillon.
Paid?
Huh?
Can we get paid for that?
I doubt it. But Tim Dillon, have you ever heard of him? He's a comedian, but he's funny because he's a conservative gay. He's a gay conservative, like talk show host, comedian. He's got his podcast thing.
Yeah. And
he was on Joe Rogan's show and he talked about, and they were essentially having a similar discussion and, talking about president and what if Kamala is like, you can't have Kamala Harris up there who's up there speaking in gypsy curses. And Joe Rogan about fell out of his chair the way he said gypsy curses. It was so freaking funny.
Oh, because every single picture they take of her looks the exact same. Like, oh my God. That's where that good gypsy curse comes from.
Oh my gosh.
Like her eyes kind of bugged out. Oh Lord. Well, we predicted it. Yeah. She's going to be our next president.
So real estate. We should really, in all seriousness, we need to get an envelope and we need to have a piece of paper and we both write down a prediction. We seal it into this envelope and we date it. And I'm going to vote that we date it. And it needs to be a memorable day. It needs to be like January 1st of 2025. And we open it up and we evaluate who's more on track with what we think is going to happen with real estate. Yeah. Because I'm kind of leaning towards, I'm thinking, and we talked about this a little bit the other day, but I kind of think you're going to see rates fall again. I mean,
like if you had to give how much in how many years?
I think and this is strictly because I've heard people say this, so I'm just parroting it. I have actually no knowledge to back any of this up. By the end of 2024, you're going to see rates get back down close to the 4% mark. It might be like a 5%. And when that happens, you're going to see a real estate frenzy again, just like we saw in 2020 and 2021. And you're going to see house prices go up again. because for a couple of reasons. I think that there's going to be a lot of pushback that's going to pressure the feds to lower rates to get gyration in the market, because the market's going to stagnate now. Everybody spent too much money on their houses, and now they're locked in this house that they cannot sell and get their money back. And in order to see some gyration, they're going to need to see rates to come back down to encourage people to move, buy, sell, create gyration in the market. But the problem is that there is a supply issue. So as soon as rates go back down, these people who have been waiting for rates to go back down because they've been scared to purchase at a higher interest rate, they're going to flood the market. And then you're going to see a bidding war again on houses because people are going to panic. That's my prediction.
Yeah. Yeah. So you say by the end of 2024?
Yep. So by this time next year, you're going to see the birth of, you're going to start seeing a market frenzy again.
So think about, first of all, the idea that, like, you're talking about hills and valleys. Think about that.
Sure.
Right? Hills and valleys. Right? So you have these hills in history where the interest rates have been high.
Right.
And then you have these lows where it's been low. But the difference there is not 1 or 2 years. The difference in the middle is literally sometimes 10 years.
Sure.
Okay. So the reason that I don't believe that the interest rates are going to drop by the end of that 2024 is because we haven't even hit the crest going down into the valley.
I see. So you think it's going to get worse?
This is no, not necessarily worse. It could, but I think that it's going to stay steady.
I see.
It's going to just flatline. Yes, they're going to might have a little up and down, but flatline. Right. And that's what I see. And then maybe 10 years from now, or 5 or 6 or whatever, then yes, what you're saying is going to happen. But we're not in the valley yet, is what I think. And it's because I've seen most of my life interest rates way higher.
So, and I wasn't really paying attention because I was just fresh out of high school when all this stuff going on. As a matter of fact, in 2008, when you had the housing market crash, that was the year I graduated high school.
Yeah.
And do you think that part of the correction for that was getting interest rates lower to get people back into the housing market to kind of help give it some correction?
No. Here's what I think happened is that so when you aren't making any money, the banks aren't making any money at all because we're at 0% interest rates, very low interest rates, right? Banks not making any money.
Sure.
For a long period of time. Okay, a year or 2, 3, whatever. Then what happens is they get greedy. And so they start doing shady lending, subprime lending crap. That's what happens.
Right. I understand why
that shakes and it tears everything up.
I'm talking more on the side of, right. But I'm talking more on the side. What do you think, how they repaired that? And I think the low interest rate was a side effect of that, after the crash.
They were trying to
so
repair.
Here's, and it's kind of interesting. You think about like back in the 80s or whatever, when you're talking about where house interest rates were 17, 18%. But the problem was that you could go buy a decent house for what, $25,000?
Yeah.
So you're talking about 17, 18% on $25,000. If you want to,
you know what you just did, Shawn? You said one of the smartest things I've ever heard you say. The bottom line is those are directly related. What they're saying, they're both related.
Absolutely.
Everything what you just said is absolutely related. They're going to move the same direction. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
They're related. Those two things are not separate. Related. And they will move at the same speed.
Yeah. So
flat almost.
But you talk about the banks making money. If you see you talking about this valley where things stagnate, it's like, sure, the interest rates are going to be around the 7, 8, 9%, but if nobody's buying houses, the banks aren't making any money. So not only are you going to see a push to get the feds lowered, say from a government standpoint of let's get some gyration in the market, your banks are going to be screaming, hey, we need to get these interest rates down because we're not making any freaking money because no one's getting a mortgage. So the banks are going to benefit by the interest rates coming down and kind of a point I was getting at, if you're looking at, say, 18% on $25,000 is a chunk of money. You think, well, 4% is not that much money until you're putting it up against, say, a $400,000 house. 4% is actually a lot of money still.
Yeah, it's got to be the relation between how much do the banks want, what they get as zero interest rates, or do they want to make money from interest?
Right.
In other words, it's the difference. Oh my gosh, it's supply. It's the difference between how much people are willing to pay to borrow money and the difference between how much they earn.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
So that's the difference. And that little difference is like the way it moves is very flat.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. Anyway, interests are not going to go up for a while. I mean, down.
Yeah.
They will either slowly go up as my prediction. I think that if that happens, then, we're just in this very middle ground where things don't move very much. And I think that the crisis is that it's going to be, there's not going to be much movement. I think there's going to be a time period now where people are not moving all the time.
Yeah.
And so those things aren't happening. And so I think that if it continues down that way, we're going to have a crisis of like, I cannot move because I'll never find another place.
Right.
I cannot move and I think this market just stays stuck there.
Hmm.
And then because we don't have the skills, people don't know how to be the carpenter that we talked about, that we've lost that trade.
Right.
Gone. And so we're stuck. And I think that that's what will happen.
It's an interesting thought. But, on a good note of that, it's a good way for things to finally kind of stabilize. Yeah. Because, if the bad part, if interest rates do go down, like I kind of think they might, you play that out, house prices go back up. Well, it just causes inflation to happen again. Right. And things just get more expensive. And the last thing to go up in inflation is going to be people's wages. So wages are already behind. So they're just going to be behind again. So it would actually it could be detrimental to see the housing for interest rates to go down suddenly. So it might be a blessing in disguise, because then it causes everybody to stop, essentially, I lost the word for it, impulse buying houses. It goes back to, hey, buying a house is a really big freaking deal. It should take you some time, some thought, some saving, and, being very careful about how you purchase your home, and can actually be a really good thing for a lot of people. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to be stuck in a house that they may not want to be stuck in for a while, but long term, they may look back and it's like, I'm glad I spent 10, 15 years in that house.
Here's the thing is that here's what low interest rates did. Oh gosh. Yeah. It basically destroys the whole thing. It's not good at all when they're low, but man, it's going to be a while before they go up though, or down.
Right.
Isn't it crazy? Like, I think, do you feel like let's say between you and your parents, not you, but your generation and your parents' generation, like when what was their debt at this age?
Right.
Their debt and I think ours is a lot lower.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as people, not government, but people. I mean, I really do.
You think our debt's lower?
Oh, I don't know. That's what in some ways.
I don't know. I don't know if I would think it the exact opposite. I would figure that, especially, and you can even set this to the side. I think you take student loans into consideration. Mm-hmm. I think it's astronomically higher, but it just seems like we have a lot more things that we like to spend our money on. You think back to what our parents spent their money on. I don't think it was normal for our parents to have 2 or 3 credit cards that they carried a $50,000 balance on just because they like to go shopping. How many there's a lot of people that have that, like people my age, right. They just have $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 just in credit card debt just because they go swipe a card when they go shopping and they just make a payment. Amazon. Like, we could probably Google it. See, this is why we need the TV. We could Google, what is the total Amazon credit at the moment? How much, what's the outstanding balance for Amazon just on credit card shopping. And there's probably a vague number that Google would give us, and it'd probably blow our freaking minds.
You know what's crazy? Honestly, I mean, what's the next step? So you get a society, another generation, and now they, instead of owing, $100,000 when you die, now you owe $2 million. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, so what's next? And the answer is, okay, we're going to round up the people who can't pay because we got to live and move.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to start with these people, and what's next? It just goes on and on.
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, what? And that's the problem right there.
I think about like my parents. I think they bought the house that I grew up in. I want to say they paid like $25,000 for that house. I mean, and that was in my lifetime. And that was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. My dad eventually put in another bathroom. You think about the expense of a car, and our generation, we want bigger, better, newer. Whereas I feel like my parents' generation, we just need a vehicle to get us from A to B. It doesn't need to have all these bells and whistles. My dad had a truck that didn't even have an air conditioner in it because it was cheaper. Or it didn't have a heater, something like that. Like there was a feature where you could buy this truck without a heater because it's cheaper. You probably can't even find that on a lot now. That's not an option. Like we don't even talk about that. And I've got another theory about this, and I feel like it's going to be the downfall of capitalism. And just to give it a title, because I feel that capitalism is obviously a good thing, partly because there's not really another system out there that has had the success that capitalism has. But here's something that I feel like has happened just in my time here. I think about the house that my parents bought for $25,000. I feel like at one point they mentioned to me that it was like a foreclosure. And that was one of the reasons it was so cheap, is because used to, if I'm understanding this correctly, if you had a foreclosure, you went to the bank had possessed this house, and you take over the note. So whatever's left owed on this house, this is now your house. And if it was a $35,000 house, hey, you just got a $25,000 house, or a $35,000 house for $25,000. Well, the banks have caught on to this now. And if a bank forecloses on a house, they're not going to sell to you this house for what was owed on the house. They're going to put it back on the market for market value and maximize the profit. Right? So now there used to be some hacks in the system to where people could go and get deals on things, and it made their dollar go a lot further. And where the whole thing with capitalism comes into play is that they'll teach you in capitalism, it's like, how do you maximize profits? And so continually, every single company with every single product, with every single service, it's all about getting the most that you possibly can out of every single product. And that's part of the reasons why things are so expensive now, because used to, let's say, I don't know, I'm going to make up an example, but let's say you were an electrician or a plumber and you went and did a service on a house. The thought was, I could probably charge $30 an hour, and that gives me I can make an honest living that way. That's not the case anymore, because now it says that's a bad business strategy. You need to look and see what the market value of your services are, and you need to see what other people are charging, and you need to be competitive. And if your competitor is charging $150 an hour, you need to charge $150 an hour, and you guys need to compete for the business based on your services. And what happens is like there's almost this price war, but in the opposite direction of how much money can you possibly get out of a product. And I think it used to be about how inexpensive can we make things for people so that people can have goods and services at a reasonable rate. And now it's, how do we maximize our profits? How do we squeeze every last cent out of this product that we possibly can so that we get richer? And I think there's a happy medium there. You can't expect somebody to give away their services and live in poverty. But I think there's this, you talk about this whole corporate greed thing. And I think that it does come into play of, we've maximized dollars on absolutely everything, and it puts a pinch on people. But partly because people don't know how to say no to some things. They want the best and the biggest and the brightest. Just about it.
Thank you for listening to Positively Undefeated. If there was something in this show that resonated with you, please share the show with your community. If you want this show delivered each Monday morning to your podcast app of choice, please subscribe or follow. And if you'd like to get a hold of Burl, please do so by going to burlstricker.com/contact.